So a lot of people have been asking me how I set up my adult monitor enclosures and breeding and whatnot. This is my adult male black dragon enclosure. There he is on the edge of the pond. Basically all my enclosures are module, so they're all there you go. They're all essentially 4x8 modules. So if you look at the ceiling, there's a seam down the center. That's a 4x8 section. Next to it's a 4x8 section. Then the outside walls are 4x8 sheets of 5/8 inch thick melamine coated compressed plywood. Same thing with the floor. The floor is all module also. This one has a 300-gallon preform Rubbermaid pond in it on a filter system. The front is all Lexan. It's all 090 thick Lexan sheets. I put all the cages up on concrete pylons or concrete footers. There's footers under all of the pond areas. There's extra footers and braces under all the pond areas. Obviously they weigh, a pond full of water that's that size weighs a couple thousand pounds. The lighting in there's two 250 watt infrared heat lamps that keep a big slate piece underneath it around 120 degrees, and there's shelving and plants just for kind of aesthetics. And then the UV lights, there's actually 48-inch long 32 watt plant and aquarium UV strips up there, and those are basically just for the plants. Then there's a UVB light incandescent in the corner for the monitors, even though they don't really need UVA and UVB. If you dust their crickets, they don't create D3 in their skin like iguanas. But I just like to use it just to mimic their natural habitat. Their lights are all on timers. Then this is actually the big breeding enclosure. So it's 16 feet long by 8 foot deep by 7 foot tall. And then there's a wall that's shared down the center. And there's 2 cat doors that go from one side to the other. And that allows me to mix my male in with my female when it comes to breeding time. But this is the female side of the enclosure. So she's in here right now. She's actually full of eggs at the moment. She probably has about 17 eggs in her. Last flush was 15. And her lay box area is all temperature and humidistat controlled. So I try to keep her lay box around 85 to 90 degrees, 100% humidity, so she can dig around there when she needs to. All the bedding's forest floor cypress mulch. I don't use anything else other than forest floor cypress mulch. And the lay box is actually a mixture of cypress mulch, organic topsoil, play sand that's refined, and peat moss. And then I also mix in a little bit of perlite just to keep it from compacting. She has a heat bulb area underneath the shelf back behind the pond. It's got 150 watt ceramic, and it keeps that area pretty warm. I try to keep all their basking areas around 120 degrees. And she also has a strip light for her plants in here. And then a hide. And let me go around to the back side of the enclosures. We have another door over here. Obviously this is all Lexan also, venting. And I'll take you to the filter system. So the pond filter, I know you know with water monitors, they only go to the bathroom in their water generally. As long as they have a big enough water area, they don't usually go to the bathroom anywhere else. So they have an Aquas 2000 pond filter hooked up to each of the ponds. It's the same pond filter, so the first big pond actually overflows into the second smaller pond through there. Both the pond heights are the exact same, so when the pond kicks off and they essentially settle, you don't have one overflowing to the other. But there is an intake in both ponds, but only an outlet connecting the two from the big one to the small one. So I'll show you the filter system. It is actually out here behind the garage. So this is the Aquas Ultima 2000 filter system. It's designed for a 3,000 gallon koi pond. So this is designed for a 3,000 gallon koi pond. It's got the media inside of it. I got this specifically because it's got a backwash and rinse feature, just like a pool pond pump, so I don't have to swap out their water as often. It's got a 4,500 gallon per hour pump. Then all of the inlets and outlets have ball valves on them, so I can adjust flow. 4,500 gallons per hour will cycle 600 gallons of water pretty quickly, so I turned that down so we don't have an exchange rate that's too ridiculous. Plus, you don't want to create such a huge amount of suction in the pond that your lizard gets stuck to it and held underwater, so I put big cages on all of the intakes and outlets of all of the pond equipment inside the pond, so it's safer for them. I added an external screen, just like you would have on a pool filter also, for certain solids, and then everything else gets filtered out and bioed out through the biofilter. There's a couple fish in the pond. I generally don't keep fish in the pond just because, I don't know, it doesn't really pay to have them in there, and when I swap the water out, if I keep fish in there, I need to condition it, and I don't like to condition the water. And that's basically it for the larger water monitor enclosure, and I'll show you what I do with the babies. So this is the reptile room. I always keep a lot of frozens on hand. I get most of them from Mice Direct, depending on who has the stock at the time. A lot of people are out of stuff. There's a couple hundred chicks, a couple hundred mice, a couple hundred rats. There's guinea pigs in here, pinkies, all kinds of good stuff. A clutch just hatched on 4/16/2016 from my normie male and my 100% het female, or sorry, normie female and 100% het male for Black Dragon. These are them. They just hatched a couple days ago. All 8 of them are doing fine. They're very curious, not aggressive, which most captive born and bred monitors are not. They do well in here. I have a 150 watt ceramic heat bulb, which keeps their basking areas around 110 degrees. And then they have a normal incandescent. It's about a 26 watt UVB. I try to set up their UVB so they don't give off heat. If you have a basking area that's as hot as you need for these monitors, you don't want a UV light that gives off heat or a light that gives off heat. You'll end up getting your ambient temperature in your cage up way too high. Generally, the ambient temperature in here stays around 80 to 82, and then the water temperature the water temperature usually doesn't break 80, so they can go in the water to cool off and then go on the hot side to heat up, and that stays on 24/7. The only thing on the timer in my other monitor cages is the UV lights. Other than that, the basking areas stay on 24/7. Here's one of my smaller male black dragons. Also my larger, soon-to-be bred female black dragon. Her name is Batwoman. And she's cool. She likes to come out and play. Come here. Come on. Their cage is set up the same way. You just need to make sure you have a large enough water dish in here for them to submerge, and then they won't poop in their media. Same thing, the cypress mulch everywhere. If you're going to put trees in the larger enclosures, you need to use ficus trees, anything non-aromatic. Anything non-aromatic is good for monitors. Monitors usually don't like pine or aspen mulch. It's not good for them. The eggs, as far as hatching, I know a lot of you guys have been buying pairs from me because you want to breed and whatnot. They generally just need a ton of space, a ton of heat, and a willing male and female of a good age. This is a retired wine fridge with a Helix variable thermostat on it. I keep all my eggs at 86 degrees, and then I add extra temperature probes in there for monitoring humidity and temperature. These are some of the clutches I have. Here's her last clutch, actually. So the last clutch she laid was 15 eggs on January 20th of 2016. And there they are, still doing good. They're all fertile. If they weren't fertile, you would know by now. They'd be sunk in. And so these guys can go back in the incubator. On the incubators, I go to Bean Farm and I use a I think it's a 32 watt heat mat on the bottom and the top. And then I put water bottles in there and any empty space. It just helps retain the heat. So when you open the door and you shut it, you're not losing all the heat, and then your heat pads are kicking back on. And those heat pads can get up to 140 degrees. So if you use like a Zoom Ed or whatever thermostat, it just kicks your pads on and off. It's not really good for an incubator. The Helix variable thermostat works really well because it actually varies the amperage going to the heat mats, so it'll keep them at a constant temperature. So when the incubator's heating up, it'll bring them up to a higher temperature till it hits heat, but then once it's heated up at 86, if you go in there with an infrared temp gun, it'll actually read around 86 to 90 degrees at the pad because the variable Helix thermostat's keeping it at a constant temperature instead of just kicking it on and off, which makes it a lot easier to keep track of. It's a lot more accurate. I just like it better for peace of mind. But yeah, that's basically it for my larger monitor enclosures. See if she wants to say hi now. Oh. Want to say hi? This is one of my bigger female black dragons. The other, my male, breeding male is from Nerd, and he does really well. He's not very handleable though, but I try to work with him as much as I can. But my female obviously is much more social and doesn't mind being handled. She likes to come out of the cage whenever she can. She's pretty big. She's a little over 4 foot, so she'll probably be breeding by the end of the year. And hopefully I'm going to stop breeding my normie female that I have, because she's produced tons of clutches for me already. I wanted to bring you back out here to show you the big males out here basking. There it goes, back up towards the pond. And he's back in the water. I wanted to show you my big female who's pregnant. Bring her out of the pond, let you see her. She's a little skittish because she's got eggs in her, but I've had her for about 10 years. So she's very nice. But she's super fat right now, as you can see. And she does really well. There's the weigh box area, all the temperature probes going in to the side, and then there's a heat mat underneath that's on a thermostat, keeps all those temperatures good. And that's about it. It's not too difficult. You just need a ton of space, a lot of know-how. You want to be able to build your own cages. If you're dealing with the big water monitors, one of the tips is to put a latch on the bottom of the door, not just up where you can grab it, because if they're going to push the door open, they'll do it at the bottom. I've had it happen before where I used to have my ficus trees in there, and monitor will get between the ficus pot and the door and push, and it'll pop the doors open. So I've come home to loose 7-foot water monitors in the garage. So but that's basically it. You just need a ton of space. Keep feeding. So my female, since I've had her for so long, when she's not mating, she's actually in this. It's a Ryan 6-foot by 10-foot sunroom, and it's attached to my house. But right now it's not actually set up because I moved her down into the other enclosure for the last month because she's about to lay. Normally there's a lot more bedding in here, and I have the ficus tree that sits over there and comes up. And but if you're gonna do an outdoor enclosure that's enclosed like this, you need to be mindful of the temperatures during the hot days. Like even right now it's not that hot, but if you look inside here, it's almost 120 degrees, which is not ideal for really any reptile, for an ambient temperature anyway. So usually she has her heating pads down here. The heat pad stays on 24/7, so these rocks actually stay somewhat warm around 90 degrees, but then the heat light's on a thermostat, so when the ambient inside the room gets down below 80, which is usually only at nighttime, the heat lamp kicks on. Then she has a, I believe this is a 200-gallon preformed pond, and then since it's a standalone system, I run it on a Fluval FX6 filter. It works okay. You need to clean it out like once a week at least, just because it'll get clogged up with all the solids, since there is a lot of solids when you're dealing with a monitor who eats all the time. There's also a door that goes outside there, and then the branches and stuff that go inside, but this is where she's usually at. She likes the natural light, and she likes being a little more social since it's connected to the house. She can see in everywhere. To bring the ambient temperatures down, I actually added a sunshade above. You can kind of see it, but it goes all the way across. It shades the sunroom a little, and then there's a vent in the top. But what I usually do is there's a sliding door that goes into the sunroom, and it's all sealed to the house. The floor is all foamed ABS, quarter-inch ABS. Well, it's actually a couple millimeters, so it's the conversion ends up being like 240 something or 236, something like that. So it's close to a quarter-inch thick ABS, so it's all very water resistant, obviously. But then this window goes right out into that sunroom, and I keep these windows open when she's in there, so there's an air exchange between the cool air in the house and the ambient in the sunroom, which keeps it down around 100 degrees. When it gets hot, it'll be around 100 degrees in there, which isn't too bad. As long as your water vessel is enough to keep the water temperature down, they can stay in there. If your ambient is high and your water vessel only has 50 gallons in it, say your ambient's going to transfer into your water vessel, and you're going to have water temperatures that are way too hot, in which case your monitor has nowhere to go to cool off. So as long as you can keep your water temperatures down, that can always be the cold side of your enclosure. But if your ambients are getting way too high up there, you need to be mindful of that. But a lot of people ask me about outdoor enclosures. I'm in San Diego, so it doesn't get as hot. Well, it gets pretty hot, but not like in Florida where you get hot, but it's also humid, so it helps out a little bit as far as tropical living monitors. But yeah, normally my female's in here. The filter, that Fluval FX6 runs 24/7. The other filters on the bigger ponds downstairs, they're on a timer, so generally they run for 8 or 9 hours a day, and then it'll kick on a half an hour in the middle of the night just to turn the water over so it doesn't sit there and ruin all the bio in the filter. But that's pretty much it. Please feel free to email me if you have any more questions. And if you really want to get into prices of stuff, you really have to look up all the individual components. If you're going to build something like this, it's very expensive. Just the Ryan sunroom alone was $2,000, and then obviously your pond and your filter and all that stuff's another couple grand. It was like $500 just for the sheeting for the floor, and then buying all the bags of cypress mulch, and it just gets up there. What's cool is these little hides are actually the covers from Home Depot that go on top of sprinkler systems. So you can actually get one of those and just cut it out, and it creates a cool little rock hide. But feel free to hit me up, and I can answer any questions that you have. I just wanted to do a little video to update you guys with my setup, and hopefully to help some of you other guys out there get your monitors and great enclosures and start breeding. Thanks a lot.